Coach Quip. This is episode 183. I'm Coach Robyn.
I'm Coach Chris.
And today we're talking about mental toughness. This is such a hot topic. Always, always, always. I think especially after the last 5 years, it's like people just want little nuggets that they can use in real life to be mentally a little bit more resilient. And today we've got 10 of them.
Yeah, this used to be the topic that I think athletes who were looking for like the little extra edge would dive into and think, oh, it's a little woo-woo, but I'm going to try to think about, the non-physical aspect of training. And now I think you're right. Like, it is literally survival for all of us to be mentally resilient. And, with the work stress, life stress, family stress, world stress, and your training, like, this can really help you stay grounded. So.
Yeah. If you, even jot one of these down or commit it, chances are you're going to be able to use it. And we did not make any of these up. It's great. We just completely found inspiration via Training Peaks actually has a really great blog that they message out to all of coaches, but then I think you all, if you have a Training Peaks account, that you can sign up for it too. And there was one recently by William Ritter entitled 10 Tips to Get Mentally Tough. And this is the one that we drew from for this episode.
Yeah, so let's start it off. Tip number 1 to develop mental toughness is to hype yourself up. This is one of my favorite ones. I'm glad I get to start this one because we've said, be careful how you speak to yourself. You're always listening. It's this idea that you have to be your own biggest cheerleader. And also the way that the stories that we tell ourselves impact our life experience, right? A good example of this, every single person knows somebody who's always the victim.
Yes.
Right? And you can look objectively at your friend and be like, it was kind of your fault that happened, right? But they're always the victim.
Yeah.
It's the stories that they're telling themselves, right? So this plays out in our training, in our racing. So you have to be cautious of the stories that you're telling yourself because you're always listening, and it really does influence what we are able to do. So as an example, if you think that you cannot hold the pace in your race, you will not be able to hold that pace. Your brain will trick you into thinking you're dying and that your legs are going to fall off or your lungs are starting on fire. So we have to really lean into that positive self-talk and hype yourself up because the world will beat you down. We have episode 149, which is about visualization, which is a little bit different than hyping yourself up, but it's kind of like
It's you in the right space.
It puts you in the right space, exactly. That's a great way to put it.
All right, number 2, focus on what feels good. This is one that I use a lot actually when I'm coaching people too. So we really become what we can focus on. So if you're running a 5K and all you can think of is, oh my God, my legs are on fire, they feel like bricks, guess what? Then that's how you're going to feel. However, if we flip that and think about the things that actually feel good, then we're not going to focus as much on the pain. So when people are running close to threshold pace or like a truly hard effort, a lot of times I'll say, drive your elbows back, shake your hands out, right? Things that, you're not necessarily feeling pain on that you can control and feel a little bit more powerful. Or if I am running in the heat and humidity, which we all know that I'm not super good in to start at the beginning of summer, right? I will think about the fact that oh wow, but it feels really good to have the sun on my skin. Or, ooh, I turned around and I got some breeze. Okay, I can go a little bit more work now because I'm getting some more air. So instead of thinking about that I'm melting and that I'm going to have to wring out my sports bra after this, and if you haven't listened to episode 181 on getting your funk out, now is a good time. But think about what actually feels good about the experience so that you're not just wallowing in the bad.
Does this count focusing on the cute dogs?
Absolutely, 100%.
That's
right,
my strategy.
it just makes everything a little bit lighter, right?
Yep. And I know people who have DPMs in their runs, like dogs per mile.
Oh, I was like, what is DPM? I know, surprise.
Dogs per mile. Number 3 is to develop a mantra. So we have done past episodes on developing mantras, including episode 69, way back before we had video, about positive race mantras. This is just choosing a phrase that resonates with you and repeating that and going back to that in those tough times. So it's just, again, it's another thing to focus on to keep you able to keep moving forward. Even better if you can time it with your foot strikes or with your breathing. And, we always have mantras written up on the mirrors here.
Yep.
So, good one. Fear less, brave more.
There's a lot of them.
Yeah.
There's a whole bunch, right? I think a lot of times our run influencers or people who, are big kind of run beacons in the world, at least on social media, they'll actually share theirs, which I think is really cool because sometimes they'll really resonate. I know on episode 69 too, we also have an entire episode dedicated to positive race mantras that you can delve through, but maybe do it and listen with a pen in hand so that you could jot it down. Number 4 is to be a creature of habit. I love James Clear on Atomic Habits, and this one is right up that alley, so I'm so glad I'm doing number 4. Developing a routine, honestly, and then simply following along means that you're just going to do it, right? Less thinking. That structure, we thrive. As much as we want to say, like, I don't want to be booked. No, we actually do best. There is a lot of freedom in having structure. It can help you stay on track, especially when your motivation is low. So if it's rainy out, but guess what? You already have all your clothes laid out and somebody is, your Monday morning run partner is ready to go, you're going to get out the door, right? Episode 124 on routines is really helpful for this too. I don't know. I tend to be the most proud when I do the things that I knew that I might not otherwise do, right? You're not proud of doing the things that you do on the easy days. It's all of those hard days. And having habit helps those things happen.
Absolutely. Next up is to avoid the comparison trap. I actually did a full episode on this, episode 45, about the comparison trap, but social media is really, I think, the worst part of this. Social media and maybe sometimes our run chats, like when we get around, say we're before a race and everybody around you is talking about how nervous they are
or the stuff they're cramming in pre-race.
Yeah, and then you're like, wait, should I be nervous too? Like, we feel the need to be aligned with other people, and so it can be really easy to fall into comparison traps of either people's paces, their distances, their volume, and it's just, be careful of how much social media and that sort of side chatter that you consume.
I think more and more I was reading this little blip on, like what brings people the most happiness and the most kind of mental reset. And this quote, I'll probably send an email out on it if I haven't already by the time this airs, about creation over consumption.
Yeah.
And I think this one falls into that, right? So if you can create the energy by going out on the run instead of sitting and consuming and comparing, your happiness after that and that mental reset and the gains that you get are a lot greater. So creation over consumption.
Yeah, just think about how a lot of people go default to social media, to scrolling, to reset. Oh, I have a break. I want to
it's a terrible
relax.
Idea.
And you feel worse at the end
100%,
of it than you do. And I think we never regret going for doing a workout, right? We always feel better afterwards. So, yeah.
Avoid it.
Avoid the comparison trap.
Number 6 is consider how you frame your suffering. Listen, we're going to be training. Swim, bike, run, lift, whatever it is. We know that at some point it's going to get a little bit hard. But if you expect it, you can anticipate it. And then it's coming. You can embrace it and move past it. And there's a lot of power in knowing that it's going to hurt, right? We have people who line up for 5Ks. And it's like, yeah, you're going to be riding the line of anaerobic capacity. That is an uncomfortable space to be in. But if you know that it's coming and you meet it, you can kind of hang out with it without kind of freaking out about it, which makes, 100% you raise your mental toughness.
Yeah, hanging out with it. I like that. Next up is to relax. A lot of our own suffering is because of resistance as opposed to relaxing into what we're doing. And even when it's uncomfortable, say a tempo run, right? We're experiencing discomfort, but if we can relax and experience the tempo run for what it is, as opposed to assigning feelings or thoughts to it, we can really lean into that mental toughness and have a much better experience.
And knowing how things stack too, right? Sometimes I had an athlete, I've coached her for a year and a half, and she came to me, well, actually she was just sitting in boots here in the lounge, and she said, hey, can I talk to you about my weekday runs? And I'm like, yeah, no problem. She's like, it's really hard when you rate 7 miles. I'm like, why are you worried about 7 miles? And she's like, she's doing marathon build. So 7 miles on a Wednesday is very warranted because she needs, she's in her last 4 or 5 build weeks total. I'm like, well, why is that hard? And she's like, I don't know. It's just hard to think about doing anything longer than an hour. And I was like, well, first of all, this is a tempo run, so you're going to be faster than an hour. So don't get caught up on the 7 miles. Okay, so this is what we're going to do. We're going to look back at your last 2 training blocks, because let's just say that she did 2 by 20 minutes and then she did 25 and 20 minutes and now she has 25 and 30 minutes, right? She then looked back and realized that she would be well under an hour for the 7 miles. And not only that, but that she had strategically stacked her tempos. So she was actually worried about the total distance or the total moving time as well as the tempo effort. And by just looking back and realizing that she had already done the work to merit her nailing both of those things, allowed her to relax. And of course she nailed the workout and was like, you were right, thanks for talking about it. And I'm like, girl, it's just math, that's why I'm here. But all of our programming, that we have, whether it's for Run Club or Tri Club, follows that same. It's not, it is custom because we've written it, but it's not proprietary, and that like we all are certified and know how to write, numerically sound programming, but there's a reason for it. And when you know that it's a speed run, you could be scared, but when you're in week 10 of a build, you've done the work to merit towing the line, and that's why the one that's written you can slay, and that allows you to relax.
Absolutely. And that's, again, another good reason to have a coach, to have somebody to kind of pull you back into reality, because our brains can do some wild things.
Crazy things.
I, well out of high school, thought that I was that high school miler. Right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And it took a long time to break out of that, but that was a brain thing. That wasn't a body thing.
Yeah.
That was like, oh, this is where I remember being. We have to have somebody to remind us to look back at our training peaks and see how we've been stacking.
Also, shout out to keeping a training log.
Absolutely. And we have past episodes about that as well.
Number 8 is to get out of your damn way. Don't overthink it, right? Just stop figuring out why you can't do it. I love this one, thinking about that you can actually alleviate your sports pressure by spending some time thinking about how you're awesome outside your sport, right? Like, what hobbies do you have? What other things are you trying to accomplish this year that you're stacking bricks toward that have nothing to do with your sport? How's your job going? How's your relationship with your family? Like, are you a good partner? How is that? All of that really helps build you up as a human way before we consider you as an athlete. And that really allows you to just kind of toe the line of whatever you're trying to do, with a calm heart. And that is a really big piece of mental toughness, is just having kind of a collected, calm mind. And this one, above all else, really helps get you there.
Next up is to manage your stress. I'm going to say it. Stress is stress is stress. And I
had an athlete repeat it back to me yesterday.
I
was jazzed. I was like, oh, you're listening.
That's fantastic. Yeah. Yep. Everybody has stress in their lives, and it comes from different places, but you can reduce your stress load by strategically planning out the parts that you can control. So like your meals, your sleep cycles, your training equipment, having your shit together in other areas of your life can really be helpful and help you manage that stress. So part of this also is because we're talking about mental toughness, your brain can create stress too. We can really, we've got athletes racing this weekend. We've got a lot of stressed out people that we're talking to right now. And some of that is self-inflicted.
Yep.
Right? So manage what you can manage, control what you can control, and then go back to 7 and 8, relax and get out of your own way.
I think to manage your stress, shout out to just taking a real holistic look at the things that you are messing up, right? And that you can do better. I literally, in between us recording, I got a text from an athlete that's having major problems falling asleep. So then, very much unlike them, they're having troubles getting up, which is not normal for them. They're usually like to do their things in the morning. And I proceeded to ask, okay, what's going on because they first asked, don't you have problems with this? I'm like, I do, but I got to tell you, I'm barely drinking right now, which is great, like maybe 3 drinks a week on the weekend. And I'm also reading a lot because I have a big book goal this year that I'm ahead of schedule with, so I'm psyched. But I know that I can knock out, however many pages before sleep, and because of that, I'm falling asleep on time. And they replied, great call. Not only did the time change not help, but they're definitely having a glass of wine, and they're on their phone late at night instead of just picking up something that's paper. And it allowed us to have that talk because they're going to change that now and hopefully manage their stress load a little bit better, fall asleep a little bit sooner, and wake up at a time that they normally wake up and feel better at. So managing your stress is also checking yourself.
Gosh, and so much of it is you really have to take that harsh, honest self-assessment to really figure out where the stress is coming from, because there are times where like everything just feels oppressive, right? If you're watching the news, you're spending time on social media,
it's too much.
It is way too much. And there are times when I feel stressed, but I couldn't point to an exact one thing, right? But something like that there are fixes out there, right? And so part of being mentally tough and working on your overall mental health is taking that honest look to be like, all right, you know what? My nighttime routine has kind of gotten jacked. I need to fix that.
Yeah.
And that's something you can control and you can make a real change on.
A shout out, not to harp on the alcohol thing, but I'm going to harp on the alcohol thing. I definitely know, I mean, we know that alcohol is one thing. When you're consuming it, it usually messes up your sleep overnight. It might help you fall asleep, but then the next day, right, the whole anxiety thing of it does change how you feel over the next subsequent days, even if you only have 1 to 2 drinks. I have an athlete that is now almost a year and a half without drinking because they noticed that just how anxious they had gotten. They were thinking it was because of like COVID and just a crazy few years, but they cut back alcohol and realized that their anxiety reduced, and they were like, well, what happens if I stop altogether? And I'll tell you, it is so much better. So this is one lever. I know, 3 years ago, many of us would be like, oh no, I'm not giving that up. But more and more we're seeing people changing their consumption because it is directly impacting their levels of stress and anxiety. So if this is you, just, maybe do a little digging, little Huberman Lab on it.
Yeah, we got an alcohol episode coming up, I think.
Oh, have we not done one?
I don't think we have.
We've just touched on it a bunch. Okay, Look at that. From hydration to alcohol. We're just left and right.
And number 10, our final tip here for mental toughness is to practice suffering. We get better at what we practice. So, leaning into those hard moments. Recovery is the key to suffering. And that might sound counterintuitive, but what we're talking about here is if you go easy on your easy days, you can really lean into going hard on your harder days. And when you can see the difference between those two spaces, and not every run is just like a medium hard run, you can really see the ways that, and the tools that you can use to manage the stress on those hard days.
Yeah, and this is a huge one, right? Practicing suffering also means being deliberate with when you practice it, right?
Yeah.
And fitness is only actualized through the recovery phase. You knew that I was going to work it in. But that holds true here too. And if you don't respect the columns that your training is supposed to fall in, then unfortunately, you're going to not be able to practice suffering quite as much as you might otherwise be able to, and then you'll be not as mentally tough when you're doing it. So I think that's a really good reminder of why to keep the easy, so that when you toe the line on a Tuesday for speed, you're like, oh yeah, here we go. I ran easy yesterday for this.
Yep, and we often talk about getting comfortable being uncomfortable, and this is your time to do that. So we know that racing is about holding the hardest effort that we can for as long as we can and being strategic about it. And we have multiple opportunities in our training cycle to do those sort of dress rehearsal runs, and practice makes you better when it actually is time to go.
When we're thinking about the 80-20 rule too, so there's a lot of training methodologies that follow the 80-20 rule, which is 80% of your moving time, your miles, is supposed to be in that easy AF effort, and then the 20% is supposed to be your tempo, your speed, your intensity. I always think of the 20 of like, okay, you showed up, now you're only doing 20% of, you're doing something that makes up just 20% of your week. So like it can hurt on a Thursday morning on track, right? Because you know that your next run is probably going to be easier, and so it's a little easier to suffer if you're putting it in that little 20% bucket, because you know it has a limit.
And I'll just take us full circle on this one. So you do that suffering on Thursday morning, and then you hype yourself up, because every single time that we experience that and we make it through the other side, we realize it's not that bad.
Yeah, it's true.
And we stack those bricks. So, you can celebrate the accomplishments of that 20%, and it helps in the mental toughness area.
Okay, I'm here for this. We want to hear if you use any of these. So make sure to tag us, send us a DM. We want to hear it.
And shout out to the Training Peaks blog, where we got a lot of these little facts. Check that out too. And we'll see you next time.
Thanks for listening to Coach Quip. Original music performed by Ment.
Follow us online on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at Edge Athlete Lounge. Our podcast lives in the blog section of our website. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review this podcast, and you can check out the show notes for additional ways to contact us. Ready, set, onward we go.